My name is Bubs, I'm an artist, and I like to hear myself talk, and today I'd like to hear myself talk about art styles. Specifically, how to develop them, and if my comment section has been anything to go off of, so do you all. As luck would have it, I have intentionally designed an art style for myself within the past few years, so I actually have something to share here rather than the very vague advice of, just keep drawing and it will happen. That advice is fine, of course, but I hope to give more specific guidance here. But first, a disclaimer. In this video, I will be sharing the process I use to develop my comic art style, which is the one you can see on screen right now, actually. However, just because this process worked for me does not necessarily mean it will work for you. No singular artistic process will work for every single person because every single person is different. My goal in sharing these ideas is definitely to help you, but if this advice doesn't seem all that helpful, that's okay. I mean, I guess it's a bummer and maybe a waste of both of our time, but I am trying to encourage you here, so please don't get in your head about it if this doesn't feel intuitive to you. I'm not better than you just because this worked for me. And hey, at the end of the day, if any piece of my advice here is helpful to you, that's a win for me. So get comfy, grab your snacks and refreshments, and whatever you may or may not be planning to work on alongside my yapping. And let's just get into the first thing.
Goal setting.
This, in my opinion, is kind of a neglected step when setting out to develop an art style. If you're going the traditional route of just draw until it happens, that's one thing, but if you've clicked into this video, I have to assume that hasn't worked out for you thus far. So, if you have something in the back of your head that you actually want to work towards, I think bringing that to the front of your head is a really good place to start. I feel like for a lot of artists, especially younger ones, and I include my younger self in this category for the record, so this isn't a diss, the goal of developing an art style is this vague idea of get better at art. But in my opinion, this goal is a little too nebulous to be all that helpful. Firstly, what qualifies as better is completely subjective and very difficult to measure as a result. What is good to someone might be bad to another person, and that could be entirely up to personal preference and nothing else. Secondly, it is a very self-defeating mindset, in my opinion, to go into any creative skill focusing only on doing well. The fact of the matter is that there are times when you won't do well. Sure, this could be because you're not practiced enough to be able to consistently execute what you want, but it could also be because you're just having an off day, or you're being overly self-critical, or you're dealing with art block. It happens to everybody, including me. If you're only doing art to be good at it, then you're signing up to lose motivation fast, and that's a recipe for stagnating. What to do instead? Well, I think it's more helpful to sit down and think about what you actually want to do with your art. What are you developing this art style for? If it is helpful, you can even make a list of things. I know that this style was intended to ride the creepy cute line while still having bold, easily replicated shapes. That's exactly what I needed for the comics I wanted to make, and even the ones I'm already working on. That idea was what served as my foundation, which made it much easier for me to continue to develop certain things. Your reasons might be different. Is it to help you work towards an artistic field of your choice? Certain styles, or at the very least style traits, will lend themselves better to things like animation, comics, concept art, illustration, and the like, so maybe your goals should be centered around the specific traits that are important to your field. Is it to make your art look more like your artistic role models? That's a totally valid reason. It's along the same lines as get better, but is a way more defined goal, and is a great jumping off point to finding your own identity as an artist. Is it just for fun? Well, in that case, it's all about figuring out what you have the most fun drawing, whether that be cute little kittens, or terrifying war demons, or curvy rabbit women, or whatever else fuels your fire. These reasons, of course, can change over time, so try not to agonize over this idea too much. Still, having an endpoint in sight makes it easier to start forging a path, so you may find it useful to have at least a loose idea of what you want to work towards in your mind before you start working on it.
Find inspiration.
I am assuming that if you've clicked into this video, there is a fair chance that you've been trying and, as far as you're concerned, failing to actually develop your art style on your own. Well, then, my friend, my best advice to you is to go touch some grass. Metaphorically. Or physically, whatever works. See, the job of an artist is to interpret the world around them in a creative way. Plain and simple, and as such, there's not an artist alive who creates without some kind of inspiration. If you feel like your art is at a standstill, it's probably because in some ways you're not paying attention to all that potential inspiration. So take a break, get out there and reconnect with the things that inspire you. Nature, people, architecture, music, even art from other artists. In fact, sit down with art from your favorite artists and be critical. Pick apart the why behind your adoration for this artist's work. Why does it appeal to you? Is it the line art or lack thereof? The shading, the shapes, the textures, the way that they stylize certain parts of the body, objects, or clothes? Pick apart the style elements and find out what appeals to you the most. The more that you understand about what you like seeing, the more that you'll understand what you want to make. This is also your sign to explore some new media. If you feel like your art is stagnating or just not developing at the pace that you want it to, the solution might be to let some new sources of inspiration worm their way into your frontal lobe. This is the time to finally experience that new animated show or game everyone kept telling you to check out, because it might end up giving you good ideas. I know that I absolutely hated trying to do even semi-realistic rendering for my art until I watched Arcane and started to mimic the way that show does shadows and highlights. Whatever you want to make, find something that you think nails it and let it fuel your passion. Passion is important for art. It sounds cheesy, but it's true, and without it, you'll have a much harder time trying to move forward. Seriously, whether you're sitting down and analyzing your old favorites or finding new ones, do not neglect this step. This is one of the easiest steps, but I also feel like this is the one everyone is most likely to skip, because humans seem conditioned to keep running into a wall rather than stopping to consider an alternative path. Myself included, of course. I know that it can feel like the right move to just keep hacking at the problem until you solve it, but really, everyone needs time to reset and recharge, and that's what this step is. It's giving you an opportunity to loosen up your brain and let it soak up a bunch of great new ideas. I know that for me, even an hour of a game or a show that really inspires me can help ease me out of art-related frustrations. So be gentle with yourself and patient, because art should not be forced. If you feel you're at a loss and the well has run dry, go find a new well. It's better than pulling up rocks over and over hoping for a new result.
Experiment.
Okay, this is finally the part where teacher will let you start drawing or doing your art of choice. I'm going to be talking specifically about illustration since that's my forte, but I hope these ideas could still carry over to other art mediums in a loose way. Having said that, let me jump straight into very illustration-focused advice. I recommend getting a sketchbook, and specifically a physical one if that's something that's accessible to you. And then grab a pen, a marker, or just anything that will give you ink. Put your pencils and erasers away and just start drawing. Draw whatever comes to mind, and try to draw in as many ways as you feel like, and just keep going until you fill up a page. If it helps, write a big word at the top to act as your theme for the page, and then go. You don't have to do it all in one go, but try to take up as much blank space as you can at once, and try to do it in a lot of different ways. Try drawing things you've never drawn before, in styles you've never drawn before. And if you make any mistakes, good. Channel your inner Bob Ross. Those are happy accidents, not mistakes. Try to reinterpret the errant line or messed up shading or ink smudge as something new. Frankly, making quote-unquote mistakes is probably how most artists develop their art style, and I know that's how I did it. So, and this is a general art tip, you need to allow yourself to make art you might not love. Wanting your art to be polished and taking your time is one thing, but perfectionism in art is a great way to scare yourself away from trying new things, or just to make you miserable. Remember, what is good is subjective, so just make art, period. Worry about how good you think it is later. You'll probably end up doing something that you love, and if you don't, then you know what not to do next time. That's the joy of experimenting. You literally cannot do it incorrectly because you will always learn something new. I know that might sound really weird or scary, but I'm telling you to do this stuff because this is what helped me. Trust me, I also had to be convinced. I had an absolutely amazing comics teacher who I thought was clinically insane at first when he pushed the idea that myself and my classmates should be drawing in our sketchbook with ink only. I had been doing almost exclusively digital art for a while at that point, so I was not used to drawing without the ability to just undo. However, at a certain point in my first semester with him, something changed for me. I started going straight in with ink, filling the pages with random things, slapping color down in random places, and just having fun putting stuff on a piece of paper. Some of these pages turned out really neat. Others turned out a little boring or just kind of a fail overall, but still, I let my brain and my hand act together without my conscious intervention. I didn't allow myself to be swayed by any nagging that I couldn't draw if I didn't have a crystal clear vision or intention in my head, and without this process, this little lady would have never existed. That's right, Mina was born out of this experimentation step. The style was completely out of my comfort zone, but I just had an idea suddenly, and this was the best way for me to interpret it. This became the foundation of my comic art style, and Mina herself is now one of my most important characters, both to myself personally and even to this channel. It might sound like a lot, or overwhelming, but I swear, the results should speak for themselves if you give it a shot. Even so, as one last suggestion, if a sketchbook still seems a little too intimidating and art class exercise-y, or if it isn't all that accessible to you for whatever reason, which is actually all totally fair, maybe you could just spend some time trying to draw in the style of your favorite artists or pieces of media. Now, listen close. I'm not telling you to trace or directly copy other folks' art, but specifically draw in their style. Draw something that they haven't. Maybe an original character of yours, a self-portrait, or a popular cartoon character that doesn't belong to them, only in their style. You could even try to fill a page in a sketchbook like this. It probably won't be exact, but that's okay, and it's kind of the point. The goal of the exercise is for you to adapt your inspirations into a unique style for yourself. You'll end up doing things in this process that you really like, often by total accident, so when you're done trying to emulate others' work, focus on what you like about the completed art and not about how accurate it was to the other artist. For the record, this was something I did in my second semester with that comics teacher. I'm saving you a bunch of money on tuition by telling you this, is what I'm saying.
Practice.
This is sort of like the previous step, except that it is a little more directed. At this point, you've hopefully found some stuff you actually like in your sketchbooking and or experimenting with other people's styles. So the goal now is to start pulling your favorite things together and start applying them. Start drawing a bunch of things using the style traits you've picked out and get yourself used to the movements and the process that you've discovered. Figure out answers to things like, how are you going to interpret anatomy in your style? How are you going to render shading in your style? How simplistic or detailed do you plan on being? Make sure you practice a variety of poses, objects, backgrounds, whatever you're planning on drawing frequently. This practice is going to help you solidify and refine the things you've already started to do, or, in other words, this practice is where your style starts to emerge. Now, this is about to be very biased advice coming from a person who is all about characters, and I recognize that, but I think it can be helpful to create a couple of what I like to call sketchbook characters. Personally, I find that when trying to improve at consistency, it is good to have a few informal characters that you can draw in a lot of different situations. They just exist to act as dolls for you to work on things like anatomy, posing, different clothes, and the like, without you having to worry too much about lore, story, or anything like that. If you don't want to, anyways. I know that your mind probably goes to people based on me and what my characters tend to look like, but really, these sketchbook characters can be anything. People, animals, food, plants, disembodied eyes, sentient shapes. Hell, even text can all count. Basically, having a little roster of shapes built into your brain when you're trying to build confidence in a certain style can be really helpful, so you should make up a few things that you allow yourself to draw repeatedly, even if you're not the story writing type. The final nugget I will offer here is don't practice every day. I'm sure you've heard the advice to draw every day about 1 billion times, and while practice does indeed make progress, I find it to be kind of flawed wisdom. I'm not necessarily saying that it's bad to draw every day, but it is bad to force yourself to draw every day. Remember what I said earlier, art should not be forced. Doing something as frequently as possible is way less important than doing something with as much drive as possible, if you ask me. If you're getting burnt out or demotivated, take a break to recenter and find that passion again. Go back to the inspiration step. Getting better and more comfortable in your creative craft is not worth losing your love of it, plain and simple. So again, be patient and gentle with yourself.
Evaluate and repeat.
This is the step where I reveal that this easy 5-step process actually never ends. I'm sorry, I am a fraud. Art is a journey that will continue your whole life, if you're lucky, and that means that you learn new things all the time. I know that might sound a little lofty coming from a 20-something, but shut up! Really though, even now, after about a decade and a half of art development, I am still making progress. I'm still learning more about both digital and traditional art all the time, still aspiring to get better at painterly sorts of styles, and still trying to work on my artistic weaknesses within my comfort zones, and all that happens on a daily basis. Every time I draw, I learn something new, even if it's small, even if it's not conscious. I'm getting better every time. The important thing advice-wise here, however, is that you should actively try to be a little self-critical. Don't be mean to yourself, but be honest. Are there things in your style that just aren't working for what you want to draw? Maybe your style works wonders until you get to the feet, and you have no idea what to do unless your character just so happens to have the chunkiest shoes in the world. Heh. Anyway, jokes aside, that's okay, and you can change things about your style by going all the way back to step 1. Figure out what you want that thing to look like instead, find inspiration, start experimenting, and practice. I wish I could promise that if you just use those first 4 steps, you'll have the perfect art style tomorrow, because this video would probably perform really well if that was the case, but I really want to stress this idea before I shut up. You probably won't get it in one try. Maybe not 2 or 3 or even 10 tries either. I didn't get it on my first go. There were a lot of middle steps between this design and this design. I'm still not perfectly happy with my art now, and I'm always trying to work on it. It might take a lot of this evaluation and repetition before you get confident with things, but that's okay. Don't let yourself get frustrated if you end up following this loop over and over. As I said before, art is a process, but that's why it's important to start. The longer you wait, the longer you let fear or nervousness keep you from trying, the longer that you let perfectionism overwhelm and paralyze you, the longer it'll be until you're happy with what you make. So, pick up your pencil or your pen or your stylus and start. Art is hard, it's a challenge, but that's why it's special. Go take on the challenge. I believe in you. I believe in you because I believed in her. Alrighty, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching to the end, and I hope that all made sense. I tried to, edit the script to make it more legible, but you never know. Also, hey, look at that! I made this closer to 20 minutes than to an hour on purpose. I have been wanting to have some more short videos, so that's nice. Sorry for the folks that were trying to use me as background noise to get some work done, though. I suppose I didn't give you a whole lot of time to do things, but if you want to hear me yap for longer, there's plenty more videos on my channel that will do that for you. Speaking of, if you're new here, hello, nice to meet you. Would you consider checking out my other content? Maybe subscribe? I'd love to hang out again sometime, but hey, I understand if not. You're probably busy, so no hard feelings. If you're a returning viewer, thanks so much for coming back. Always nice to see a familiar face. Yellow looks great on you, by the way. Anyways, if you want to hear more advice from me, please let me know in the comments. I am always taking new suggestions because I can't ever just focus on one project, and in the meantime, keep an eye out for other videos that might come out soon. Maybe a video about a very specific Japanese game series with thoroughly discussed designs. Is that enticing? Ah, whatever. I'll stop yapping now and let you go. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you're staying hydrated, and remember that you matter. Bye! Here, come here. Come say hi. Oh, let's see if this picks up. Can you snoof it? Can you snoof it? Stop grabbing it. Snoof it. Did you snoof it? Did you say hi? Did you say hi? You snoof it? Did you say hi? Did you say hi? Yeah, I give you pieces.